and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Monday, June 10th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it is great, as always, to be with you. I truly love doing this show. 844-861-5537. Please call in if you'd like to chat with me. I'd love to hear from you. 844-861-5537. And as always, you can use the chat, which I have a direct line to right here, as long as you keep it classy. That's our rule here on Timeless. And I already see that someone is writing me shalom. Shalom to you too. You must be a Dennis and Julie listener, because I often either begin or end the show with a salutation of shalom, which I love because it means hello, but it also means peace. So we're going with it. Speaking of shalom, Sean McConnell, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jules.
We got Sean Z, aka Misinformation, in the producer's dungeon. Great to be with you. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was good. And you?
I had a great...
You were busy.
Yes, I was busy. I said to everyone in the producer's dungeon, we went in before the show and we do these, pre-production meetings where I say, I've got these clips, those clips, this is kind of the order that I'm doing things. And I said, all weekend I was slogging away for this show, but it is, I hope, really fun and useful and interesting to you, because we're going to be covering news, but also at the end, we've got kind of a weird, fun, characteristically timeless segment that we're doing. So let's dive in. I'm really excited, but I just want to say at the start that everything that I do on this show is really in pursuit of truth, beauty, and wisdom. I've been doing a lot of reflecting on this show, and we Sean and I laugh. We call it the random topic show sometimes because we just do so much. For instance, last week I did this show on Audrey Hepburn, who has totally turned into my idol. She was already my idol last week when we did the show, but if you can even believe it, this weekend I went down even more of a rabbit hole with Audrey and doing research on her, and I've gotten some of my friends even clued into the Audrey Hepburn rabbit hole. We also did a show recently on how technology is totally deadening the human experience. I've seen that with my generation, and I'm 24 years old, and I've tried to get off of social media. It's a little difficult to do that when you have a talk show and your mechanism of advertisement is social media. But I just did this show on how social media is deadening us, how even things like streaming services or something as fantastic as Amazon, for all of its advantages, it deadens the human experience, because instead of watching a movie and, going out to a movie theater, we have it on our computer. Or instead of going to a bookstore and maybe interacting with someone and buying a book, we can have it at our front doorstep. The whole point is that whatever I talk about, I'm just really trying to get myself and everyone to the best of all of our collective abilities to just a really sturdy, great, elevated place in life. I've never understood Dennis's statement that he has a, quote, erotic attraction to the truth. I've never understood that statement more than I do right now in my life. So please do know that for all of the randomness, whatever I'm giving you is really with this North Star of truth, beauty, and wisdom. So let's dive in with 3 news stories, and then I got the fun one at the end. And I'm seeing someone is writing that you love the Audrey Hepburn movies. Yes, I encourage you to go back and watch that Timeless episode, Jeremy. You'll really like it if you love Audrey's movies.
Also, you have a caller who has a question for you.
I have a caller?
Has to do with your use of shalom, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well,
and there's no name. I don't know.
It's
random on line 1.
Okay, random on line 1. Well, thank you very much for calling in, but we're gonna go ahead here with the news. But I don't know if I said this at the beginning. We're live right now on YouTube. So I do have this live chat. You can call in, speak with me in real time. And we're live Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So join the party. It's quite a party, but also we're going to be talking about some pretty not party filled things. But part of the pursuit of truth, beauty, and wisdom, I believe, is being able to talk about really, really difficult things in life with comfortability. So this past weekend, my God, this was heroic. The IDF carried out a staggeringly, just beyond belief, heroic and valorous rescue of 4 hostages being held at a refugee camp in central Gaza. So the background on this is that the IDF decided to do a daytime operation in order to get these hostages. They did a daytime operation because there's that element of surprise during, the day. Many news sources, and of course there are varied reports, say that the IDF came disguised as civilians with humanitarian aid, and then carried out that operation in order to rescue those 4 hostages who have been held by Hamas in Gaza for the past 8 months. Now, unsurprisingly, these 4 hostages were being held in civilian buildings. So this is what happens, right? It never ceases to amaze me how the obvious has to be explained to crazy, crazy people in this country who say, oh my gosh, it's so horrible for the IDF to carry out an operation in civilian buildings in order to get back some of their hostages. Well, that's the whole design. Why do you think Hamas is holding them in civilian buildings? Because Hamas does not care about its own people. We know that they use women and children as human shields. They don't care about human life, Israeli or Palestinian. They know what they're doing. They hide these hostages in civilian buildings so that when the IDF comes to rescue them, they can go, look, horrible IDF coming into civilian areas. Again, very, varied news reporting. It's very difficult these days to actually trust a good news. What I'm trying to do in my career is really be someone who you can trust. But various news entities have said that many were killed and injured in this operation. That is, of course, par for the course when it comes to operations like these at this scale, rescuing hostages during an active war. So, of course, there are going to be people who were killed or injured. Doesn't make it any the less tragic, but it is what happens. Now, if this weren't so evil and so terrible, this story could be a candidate for an SNL skit. One of the people who was holding some of the hostages was a former Al Jazeera journalist. So there was this Palestinian individual who writes for, I believe, the Palestinian Chronicle, and he had previously written for Al Jazeera, which is notorious for its lying and misreporting during this Israel-Gaza war. And this individual, this former Al Jazeera reporter, of course, was one of the people who was hiding some of those hostages. You can now understand. See, you guys sometimes don't see Sean. I always have a line to Sean. Sean looked a little surprised when I said that. You can now see why I said that if it weren't so evil and horrible, it would be a candidate for an SNL skit. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So this operation, I mentioned there were many killed and injured, both Palestinians and Israelis. There was one commander, a former Israeli police officer who was the commander in Israel's border police unit. He also served in counterterrorism, and he very sadly died in this operation. He was injured during the operation, and then he died later, succumbing to his wounds in the hospital. So once these 4 hostages, and it really is just amazing. I mean, look at these videos. of this heist. I have to tell you all, I watch Tehran and I watch Fauda. Sean, have you seen those shows? If you haven't, I'm going to shame
No.
you publicly here on live YouTube.
Shame away.
When you got into this job, you never expected that you'd be shamed live on YouTube for the shows that you didn't watch. You've got to watch Tehran and Fauda. I hope some people in the chat are fellow Tehran and Fauda fans.
Side note,
Yes.
when you went to Israel, I too have been to Israel. Were you not taken back by how similar the landscape is to California?
Yes, that's very true. It is. It is very similar.
Beautiful country.
But it has the Middle Eastern vibe, of course, because it is in the Middle East. But you're right. Yes, it does have similarities to California. But watching those videos, for anyone who watches Tehran and Fauda, I mean, it's giving Tehran and Fauda vibes, but in real life, of course. It's just, as I've said, the words are heroic and valorous. And you know what's interesting? When those 4 hostages were brought back to Israel, and right now they're in the hospital, of course. Many of them have injuries themselves. They are undergoing psychological and physical care for being in capture for 8 months by one of the most evil regimes on earth, Hamas. So they are right now in the hospital. But when those 4 hostages were rescued, it was so cool to see the videos of Israelis, left and right, fans of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and fans of Benny Gantz. Both sides, if you will, left and right of Israelis, were out there in the streets waving Israeli flags, hugging and kissing each other because they were so happy that the hostages were home. And I watch those videos, and I can't help but think how different the situation is in the United States. Where in Israel, on both the left and the right, they celebrate waving their flag. They view an event like that as a collective victory for the country. Here in the United States, think about the sides that hold and wave and display the flags. It's really conservatives who fly and display the American flag. Why is that? That's strange. We are a country. We are a collective. Yes, we're divided, but why is it that only one side in this country is proud enough to show a flag and American pride? You don't get that counterpart in Israel. And that's one of the things that really struck me about being in Israel. Sean, you mentioned that I went there. I was so lucky enough to go there when I was a senior at Harvard. I always say it's a great irony that one of my experiences, one of my most formative experiences at Harvard was going to Israel, because right now, obviously, needless to say, Harvard, like many of these other institutions, are being mired in anti-Semitic craziness. But when I was in Israel, I was so taken by the spirit of the Israeli people, the patriotism both liberals and conservatives in the country had. And I found them, just as people, to be incredibly sturdy, incredibly wise beyond their years and mature, and also fun. I mean, we would go out to Shalvata in Tel Aviv, one of the great clubs in Tel Aviv, and we would, go around to various bars, and every single time that we would raise a glass to cheers, every single Israeli that we were with, they would say, L'chaim, to life. And that made such a big impression on me, because it made me realize these people know life better than anyone. When they raise a glass to life, they know life. They know its depravities, they know its evils, and they also know its joys. And so that spirit, that vitality is just, again, something that I really, really do admire and love in Israelis, because although they are in this terrible situation where They have to enlist people in the military. They have to have it be mandatory for most Israelis because they are under such existential threats constantly to their existence, even though they are dealing with this terrible, terrible reality. It also allows them to have that spirit and vitality that I so admired, and that patriotism. And then here in the United States, by comparison, I don't find a lot of Americans to be equally lovers of life and equally patriotic. I digress about the Israeli people. Let's go back to the rescue. So amazingly, the IDF, figured out using, we can give our American selves a pat on the back here, using the help of some American intelligence, figuring out where these hostages were, executing the operation so well. They trained in model apartments. They figured out Fauda in Tehran style, where the make and the shape of those apartments in central Gaza, and they trained in model apartments. I just want to tell you two quick stories that I really think you should know about these hostages. So as mentioned, there were 4 who were rescued. 3 of them were Israeli citizens. One of them, interestingly, is a Russian citizen. And so we have to remember with this hostage crisis, it's not just that there are Israeli hostages being held in Gaza, but this is an international problem here. There was a Russian hostage. There are still American hostages still being held in Gaza. But 3 of them, as I said, were Israelis, and 1 is Russian. Here's the story of one Israeli. His name is Almog Mirjan. He's 21 years old. Can you imagine 21 years old being held in Gaza for 8 months by Hamas? He was returned to his family, thank God. But here's a really, really sad part. His father died the day before he was rescued. His father died, they believe, of a heart attack. The details are still coming out. And according to this man's aunt, his father's sister, she said, quote, "My brother," his father, "died of grief that he didn't get to see his son return." He died the day before his son came back. I'd like to show you a story of another hostage, one of these 4 who was rescued. This is a 25-year-old girl named Noah Argermani. She also held for 8 months. You can only imagine what Hamas is doing to these individuals, and especially the females. You can only imagine what she has been through. And she was the one in that video, in that helicopter that you saw earlier in the show, being put into the helicopter to fly home safely, thank God, to Israel. She, when she got back to Israel, was going to go to one hospital that the IDF had picked to be treated for her mental and physical wounds. But then they decided to transfer her to another hospital in Tel Aviv. Why? So that she could be alongside her mother, who is dying of a brain tumor right now in that hospital in Tel Aviv. I told you, the Israelis know life. They know life better than anyone. But it's not just Israelis, people around the world who have to face the basic, brutal realities that we Americans are insulated from largely. People around the world know life so much better than we do. And we Americans, no one is immune, shall we say, from the difficulties of life. Of course. I've interviewed people on this show. I've been so lucky to interview people who have talked about their life experiences. We had Aaron Prager and Dion on the show to talk about their struggles with alcohol and drug addiction. We had Andrew Bustamante, a former CIA agent, on the show, and he talked about his terrible childhood trauma, and that's part of what led him to join the CIA. You know, we Americans generally, I'm not saying that we're somehow immune from the brutal realities of life, but we have to realize that we have largely, up until this point, been immune from really just terrible wars or invasions or hostage crises. Of course, we had one in Iran in the 1970s, but for a few decades now, we generally, as Americans, have been coasting. And we've got to wise up to that fact and realize that our comforts, our security, are not the realities around the world. But instead of being wised up to our privilege, which is a term the left throws around all the time, but never actually channels it to where it should be focused on, instead of wising up to our American privilege, here's what a lot of Americans are doing these days. This, if we can play it, see when you're live. This is the video in front of the White House. Despicable. So look, we don't know if those are Americans or if those are outside plants. Probably both. But that's just a video. And by the way, when you're live, you get to see the behind the scenes fun stuff. I try to be so show busy with here's what we're doing now. Anyway, thank you for being here live and seeing some of the video lag. But this is what is happening. You know, we have Americans, or maybe not Americans, who are outside in front of the White House, who are focused on chanting in support of Hamas. There was a huge banner that you didn't see in that video, but it was, trust me, it was there. You can look it up on Twitter, of people holding up a sign that said "Glory to the martyrs," i.e. Hamas. So we have all of these Americans coming in front of the White House, and they are hyper focused on the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza. And of course, needless to say, whenever an innocent civilian dies, no matter what country or people or religion or race they come from, it is a tragedy. All of us are created in the image and likeness of God. All of us. But what's interesting to me is these individuals, you know, just intense focus on this Israel-Palestine conflict and on the alleged genocide that is going on in Gaza. And there is not a genocide going on in Gaza. That is a very strong term that we ought to be very careful about using. The evidence does not indicate, hardly, that the IDF is carrying out a genocide in Gaza. But nevertheless, we have these brainwashed Americans, you know, luxuriating in their American privilege, going in front of the White House, saying glory to some of the most evil people on earth, saying that there is a genocide going on. Meanwhile, there actually are genocides around the world going on. Shall we go through some examples? Does anybody know what's going on in Sudan? Here's a photo of a child who's starving in Sudan. Right now, Sudan has descended into war, which is not a reality that the Sudanese are not used to. Sudan has been mired in war and in conflict and starvation for many, many years now. Sudan has a population of around 48 million people. And they, by many reports, at least half of that country is starving. We can go to another place in the continent of Africa. Did you know that according to Genocide Watch, nearly 62,000 Christians in Nigeria have been massacred? Genocided. I'll actually use that term there because it's truthful. Nearly 62,000 Christians over the past 25 years have been genocided by an Islamic jihadist group there committing genocide against these Christians. The world doesn't care, right? Generally speaking. Those individuals you saw in front of the White House, glory to Hamas, but who cares about what's going on in Sudan, or who cares about the genocide against Christians in Nigeria, right? How about Haiti? I did a segment on the show a few weeks ago about what was happening in Haiti. Remember when people were talking about barbecue? Barbecue is one of the gang leaders who was vying for power when Haiti descended into gang violence. All of these competing gangs were pushing for their top spot amidst wreaking complete and total evil havoc on the already destitute country. Millions are displaced and starving. But, generally the Western media, they're not talking about Haiti. Barbecue came and went. There are people still suffering there. Why don't we tell that to those individuals in front of the White House? I could give many, many more examples of all of these instances around the world, but let's talk about another genocide that's going on in China against Uyghur Muslims. How about what the Chinese Communist Party does to its own citizens? Any of its citizens who dare to speak out against the government will face disappearance. They'll just somehow magically disappear from their homes and their families. And there are many reports that the Chinese Communist Party harvests the organs of not just Uyghur Muslims, but of their own citizens against their consent, obviously, and sells it on the black market. But again, American privileged children, what are they doing? They're standing in front of the White House and they're yelling about a genocide in Gaza, which is not happening. Terrible destitution is going on in Gaza. I am not discounting that. It's horrible. War is horrible. But we got to really figure out what is going on here. And I have a theory, and I've talked about it on this show before, that the reason that many of those individuals in front of the White House and all around our campuses, including at my alma mater, the reason why they have this hyper focus on what's going on in Gaza, while totally ignoring the genocides and the mistreatment, to put it mildly, and the killing and the evil all around the world, is because they're using this to their personal and professional advantage. They see a way for their outrage against what's going on in Gaza to benefit them, because they can point to a, quote, non-white people being genocided, in quotes, by a, quote, white people, Israelis. This is how many of them see the world. They quite literally see the world between black and white. And so what they, and I'm using the word they, I can't put everyone into this category. I'm speaking in broad brushstrokes here, but generalizations are important. You can't speak without generalizations. Many of these individuals in the Gaza solidarity encampments, in my view, they want to be able to point to a white country, Israel, and we know that Israel is 50% non-white, so it's absurd for them to even characterize Israel as a, quote, white country. But they want to go, look, white people oppressing non-white people, those in Gaza. And that's why they don't care about the plight of the Sudanese. That's why they don't care about the plight of those in Haiti or those in West Africa or those in China, because it doesn't fit the white versus non-white paradigm that they have so benefited from. They don't care when non-white people are killing other non-white people. They could give a bleep. Just as many in the United States don't care when black people kill other black people. They only care when it's a white person killing a black person. That to me is not only morally reprehensible, but if we could even kick it up a step, if we can take it there, that actually seems to me to be white supremacist. Because when you are saying that a non-white person suffering really only deserves your attention and your outrage when it's a white person, and again, I'm putting that in quotation marks, doing it to them, then that weirdly rings to me of the very thing that many of those individuals claim to hate, which is white supremacy. And I just want to say, I don't think that these people are, maybe all of them, consciously white supremacist, but they need to be able to step out of their own brainwash and see the reality for what it is. And that's the reality. Told you we're talking about heavy stuff. But this next one in our whole news sweep today is a lot lighter, I guess, comparatively than the IDF rescue in Gaza. By the way, though, I didn't mention this, but I think it is worthy of mention, that if you want to go down the rabbit hole, or if you want to watch me go down the rabbit hole, because I do rabbit holes on this show, of Israeli operations capturing hostages, there is quite a rabbit hole that you could go down. There's a picture, if we could show it here in my notes. Let's see, it's picture 4. 48 years ago this month, the IDF carried out another staggering operation, and this was the raid on Entebbe. Just to give you a quick background, because I quite literally could do a whole show on it, and if you so ask in the chat, I would be delighted to follow through and do it. There was a flight in June of 1976, from Tel Aviv to Paris. And this flight was hijacked by Palestinian terrorists, and it was taken to Entebbe, Uganda, where these terrorists were in cahoots with those in Entebbe in order to land the plane and have the hostages there. And these Palestinian terrorists carried out that hijack because they wanted some terrorists who were being held in Israel, 53 to be exact, to be released. So they were saying, we're going to hold Israelis and Jews on this Air France flight from Tel Aviv to Paris until you release the people we want to have be released in Israel. Absolutely amazing story. Just totally amazing. These Palestinian terrorists, they separated the plane between Jews and non-Jews. And the Air France crew was also absolutely heroic. The Air France crew, not being Jews, were offered by the Palestinian terrorists to go essentially be free with the non-Jews on the plane. But the 12 members of the Air France crew said, no, we're going to stay here with these Jewish hostages. Absolutely amazing story. But the end of it, to compound on the amazingness, is that the IDF carried out a cinematic, valorous rescue operation in 1976 on July 3rd, actually, to be exact. And they got all of those hostages back. But unfortunately, there was one Israeli who did die. And it actually, if you can believe it, is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's brother. That's how Netanyahu opens his biography, talking about how his brother was one of the Israelis who tragically died in that raid on Entebbe. Keeping it super light, aren't we?
They posthumously renamed that operation
Thunderbolt?
Operation Yonatan.
That's right.
In honor of Bibi's brother.
Bibi's brother. That's right. All right, shall we transition a little bit from non-white versus white paradigm conversations and heroic rescues? I just want to show you something that I saw on Instagram this past weekend of Rosie O'Donnell. And, you know, a lot of this show, I think and hope, is really giving you the truth, beauty, and wisdom perspective on a lot of the modern sludge that is just coming at us like a freight train. And so here's one example of the modern sludge. Just want you to hear this video of Rosie O'Donnell. She's talking about her son or daughter, and I don't even say that to be sarcastic. I don't know if it's the son or the daughter because the child transitioned. But I think this is really important for people to hear. So let's listen to Rosie.
Her original name was Dakota. And then about a little bit over a year ago, she said, I'd like to change my name. And I said, no kidding, why? And she said, well, I feel as though Dakota is too much of a feminine name and it has a gender identity. First of all, I'm like, how did you talk like this? Like, you know, I'm a lesbian icon. She teaches me things every day that I had no idea about. And she said, I want a name that is gender neutral. I said, well, what kind of a name? She said, I was thinking about it and I'm thinking of Clay.
All right, let's pause there for a minute. So I see these videos a lot on Instagram. And those of you who've watched this show, you know my thoughts on Instagram. I think social media is total sludge. Of course, there's good social media and bad social media. Follow me on social media if you want to get good social media, although, as you know, I don't post that much. Anyway, you know, we see this stuff on Instagram, and whenever I watch it, I'm thinking, what do people in my generation see when they're watching this video? And as I said earlier, I'm speaking in broad brushstrokes here. Not everybody in my generation, but if I may generalize for a moment, I think a lot of people would watch that video of Rosie O'Donnell and go, wow, what a great mom. What a great thing to do for your child. But what makes me sad here is that she is so brainwashed. And I think what's hard is that someone like Rosie O'Donnell, and I don't know her personally, she could be a very lovely woman. I see these moms who seem to be very well-intentioned. On the one hand, I want to be hard on them because they're brainwashed and they're really succumbing to something very bad. But there is a sense of earnestness and a sense of really thinking that they are doing right by their child. And I pick up on that. And then I realize that a lot of people my age are probably watching that and they too are brainwashed. And they're watching that mother and they're going, wow, what a great mom. And I don't mean this with any disrespect to Rosie O'Donnell. Again, I don't know her at all. She happened to be the one who popped up on my Instagram page. But we really got to point some of this out respectfully to some of these parents. Rosie O'Donnell, if you're watching, and by the way, call in. I'll put your call up first if you call in, Rosie. I don't think Rosie O'Donnell's watching. Rosie, if you're in the chat, you want to drop a little line in the chat, I'll read yours first. But if Rosie O'Donnell were watching, what I would say to her is, you think you're helping your child. You think that you're doing the new cool thing because things change and you get older, and you think this is the new cool thing that my enlightened generation has come up with that you need to carry on as a parent, but you are harming your child. Let's roll it back and listen to this one line that I think shows so much of the problem here.
I feel as though Dakota is too much of a feminine name and it has a gender identity. First of all, I'm like, how did you talk like this? Like, you know, I'm a lesbian icon. She teaches me things every day that I had no idea about.
Let's pause right there. See, Rosie thinks that she's doing, again, the woke thing or the compassionate thing. She thinks that she doesn't get the joke. She's like, oh, I'm a lesbian icon. And, you know, here's my kid that's teaching me something that I didn't know. And I'm going to be woke, and I'm going to be, you know, a good learner in my older age and learn from what these kids are telling me and how these kids are trailblazing in the same way that I trailblazed as a lesbian icon, you know, 30 years ago. What I want to say to Rosie is no. This is in a different category. This is not the trailblazing 2.0, you know? This is a different flavor. Being gay or being lesbian has been something that human beings have largely been or experimented with for a long time in civilization. We're having on Spencer Clavin tomorrow when we're talking about Greece and Rome. And I'll ask him to give examples of homosexuality in Greece and Rome. That has been a part of the human existence for some time. Transgenderism really hasn't. Cross-dressing has. But people who genuinely have gender dysphoria, that has never been largely something that has been as mainstream as homosexuality or heterosexuality in human nature. This is a very new thing. And I think that, again, Rosie O'Donnell, if I may speak for her, is thinking that she's doing something good by supporting this child because she thinks, oh, we're just evolving. We're just evolving. We're evolving, mentally and culturally as fast as, the iPhone evolved from the flip phone. No. With technology and things, we can progress fast. But with social things, human nature over thousands and thousands of years has produced some conclusions. Human nature doesn't change. And so we're now concocting this whole transgenderism stuff. And it's ruining the lives of kids. It's ruining it. It's evil. It is evil. Doesn't mean that everyone who supports it knows that what they're doing is evil, but it's evil. And so I wanted to show you that. And I wanted to show you this other part of something that she said in that interview, because it just, again, shows so much of the problem where not only are people in my generation brainwashed and we're becoming trans, but then we have the tacit support of those in older generations who think they're doing right by us, but they're really not. Let's listen to this sad, and it is sad, thing that Rosie said about how she's struggling to accept her daughter.
The hardest thing to do was not call her baby girl.
Yeah.
Because that was my common way of, morning, baby girl, right? I would always say that. And she said to me about a year and a half ago, I don't like that.
Okay.
I'm not a girl and I'm not a boy. I said, okay, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's what I'm not going to do as a commentator. What I'm not going to do is look at Rosie O'Donnell and yell out that she is so horrible and she's so evil and she's so brainwashed. First of all, I don't know Rosie O'Donnell. Second of all, I don't know that she is willingly or knowingly, I should have said knowingly instead of willingly. I don't know that she's knowingly, what was the word I decided on? Knowingly, supporting this evil. I think she's struggling with it. What I saw in that video is something that I don't think a lot of people see. I think she's struggling with it with her child, but she's going along because she thinks that's the right thing to do. And what I'm trying to do is tell her, as someone in my generation who has been so blessed enough to see the truth, who has been so blessed to be surrounded by people, including and especially my co-host, Dennis Prager, who is a living, walking embodiment of truth, beauty, and wisdom. I'm trying to say to her that she's got it wrong. That child deserves help, not endorsement of the mental illness. Just show you another quick video before we move on of what it reminded me of too. There was this video that was circulating a few months ago. Sean, I don't know if you remember it, but it was a Disney executive talking about how she's the parent of, I believe, a trans or a queer child. And she was saying that, we have to incorporate more trans and queer stories into Disney because, we don't have enough of them. And you'll see, again, I'm not going to totally slimeball these individuals. I think what they are doing is leading to a lot of evil. I don't quite know if all of them are so aware that what they're doing is evil. And you'll see the earnestness and the brainwash of this mother in this Disney clip. Let's roll it.
I'm here as a mother of two queer children, actually, one transgender child and one pansexual child, and also as a leader. One of our execs stood up and said, we only have a handful of queer leads in our content. And I went, what? That can't be true. And I realized, oh, it actually is true. And I hope this is a moment where, shoot, the 50% of the tears, sorry, are coming. We just don't allow each other to go backwards.
Listen, this may get me into some trouble among some conservatives, but I don't really care. I don't think that those are crocodile tears. I don't. I think that she genuinely believes that what she's doing is noble. I think she genuinely thinks that her children, that this deserves representation and endorsement in Disney. Now, there are some people in very high up places who I do believe are not so earnest. I think this is an evil agenda being perpetuated by some truly evil people. I mean, we see those drag queens on TikTok and they're, in their full drag and they're going like, I'm coming for your children. Those are evil people. Evil to do that to kids. The whole thing is evil to do to kids. But also, if we're really going to change this moment, we have to meet people where they are. And we have to, again, I'm obsessed with the truth. I told you I've never, ever been more aware or more full of endorsement of Dennis's great line that he has an erotic attraction to the truth than I am now. If we're going to fix this moment, if we're going to get out of this moment where kids are being proselytized and brainwashed to be trans, where they're having their body parts chopped off in the name of this sick, deranged ideology. If we're going to get out of this moment, we've got to really understand fully what we're in, including and especially the individuals such as Rosie O'Donnell and that Disney exec who really think that they're just in the, 19th Amendment passage, women's suffrage 2.0. That's what they think they're in right now. And so we have to meet them with compassion and sternness to tell them that is not what we're in. The suffragettes, a lot different than you, my friend. Maybe keep your job to reporting or making shows on the suffragettes instead of being them yourselves. That's what I would say to them. Before we move on to our third news item, let's do MyPillow. As many of you know, I use a lot of MyPillow products. I sleep on a MyPillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels and I wear my slippers. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount too if you use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today. Right now, MyPillow is having a $25 extravaganza. To get the word out, we want to tell you that you can get 2-pack multi-use MyPillows for just $25, MyPillow sandals for $25, 6-pack towel sets for $25, brand new 4-pack dish towels for, you guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, get the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric for just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping. Just go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman. All right. As much as I would love to move on to this third news story, we are live on YouTube, so I should probably look at the live chat and see. Sean, I saw you wanted to cut in. Yeah?
I have two thoughts.
Yeah, please.
One, I've never seen Rosie O'Donnell and Steve Bannon in the same place at the same time. Number two, on a more serious note, I've been developing this theory, and I'm fairly certain this will be the downfall of Western civilization.
Among other things.
Listening to children. I don't know when it started, but the more we do it, the more screwed up things become.
That's right. Yes, that is so true. Well, Miss Rabbit Hole here, one of the things that I've always found to be fascinating about fascism you know me, just I was in college. I went through this obsession with fascism. I think we talked about it on a recent Dennis and Julie. And one of the things that intrigued me was there was always a youth element to it. Always. In fact, and I could be misremembering this, but I believe under Mussolini, one of the songs, like the fascist theme songs, if you will, had a lot of lines about youth in it. Like we the Italian youth are going to, Sean, you may want to look that up now. Or we could get back to you when we're not live doing this in real time on YouTube. But I'll think about that more and develop it and then come back to you with a show on it, because there with all of these evil movements, there was always this adoration in this idolizing of youth. And you're right, it's not right. In this case, sometimes it may be well-intentioned. I believe other times it's manipulative, but kids are kids. We've lost our sense of boundaries in society. It used to be that adults, knew better than kids, and you would defer to the wisdom of adults instead of deference to children. But then in this whole post-1960s, never trust a person over 30 era, we're switching it back and we're going for what the kids say. But actually, if I may take it a step further, I don't even know if it's what the kids are saying, Sean, because I think, how are the kids saying this? The kids are saying this because the parents are brainwashing them, So it's this insidious loop of we have these people who are brainwashing these kids, and then we're going, trust the kids. It's all backwards. That's the TLDR. The TLDR is it's all backwards. Someone's writing misremember. I never heard that word before. Well, you know what? DN Chap 1417, I'm coining it. It may not be a word, but let's just go with it. Yes, people are writing, here's what's tough. Parents believe they know their children more than anyone else. But parents are all about their children's happiness, aka instant gratification. Yeah. They think they're the flag bearers of their kids. They think they know what's right for them. And I just humbly say that they ought to reconsider. All right. Third big news thing of the day. This one really is just fun. Because I knew that this episode, we'd be oscillating between the light and the very heavy. But that's life. Life is kind of moving around and oscillating, and I think that's the show. As a quick aside, one of the things I've learned about Judaism, and I love about Judaism, among other things, and I'm a Gentile, I'm a Goyim myself, but I learned that at Jewish weddings, and we did a whole timeless episode on weddings in the various traditions, religious traditions, if you'd like to check it out. We also did one on funerals in the various religious traditions for your consumption. But one of the things I learned is that at Jewish weddings, when they're up there under the Horah, you know what they do? They stamp on a piece of glass. Now, why do they do that? People go, oh, it's some idiosyncratic, ritual from chapter 8 of Exodus. No. I mean, maybe, but the reason why they do that is because they think it's important to diffuse a light moment, or diffuse is the wrong word, have a light moment be reminded by some unhappiness. To have a joyful moment like a wedding, have glass smash to remind you that life is not always so joyful. To remind you that sometimes there is difficulty and there's tragedy and pain and shattering in life. And I kind of love that because, again, that represents something about life, that we do oscillate between the happy and the unhappy. And so while people should enjoy their wedding, we also got to remember there's that other side of life. By the way, at funerals, there are also mechanisms for when you're sad in the Jewish tradition to remind you that you ought to be happy and not mourn. So it goes both ways. Anyway, oh, someone's correcting me. I said the Horah instead of the Huppah. You're so right. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. All right, so let's go to this third thing. So this past weekend, I was at my parents' house. I live in an apartment here in Los Angeles, and my sister was home for the weekend, and I decided to go home and spend some time with my parents. And adore my family beyond words, but sometimes their choice of television is, shall we say, not always what I would care to watch. I'm always there going, Fox News, Fox News, Fox News. Let's get to Sean Hannity. And they're always having CNN on. Adore them, but again, not my choice of television. But that means, given that I was at my parents' house, I did have some time to see what CNN is reporting on. And as the final part of today, I just wanted to share it with you so that we can collectively laugh about this absurdity. So we all know that about 2 weeks ago, our martyr was martyred. That's what I like to refer to the conviction of Donald Trump. Donald Trump was convicted on all, that's right, all 34 counts of a bogus sham legal trial concocted by DA Alvin Bragg, aka Mr. Get Trump, who brags, quite literally, apropos of his last name, about jailing the opposition leader. We all know that when that happened a few weeks ago, a lot of Americans kind of saw the light. The Democratic Party's a cesspool. The Democratic Party is up to all of these anti-democratic shenanigans. To those Americans who were waking up, I'd like to say, where the hell have you been, my friend? But welcome to the party. Oops. Wow, I just hit the mic. Sean's cracking up. I'm a Dennis Prager protege. I gotta hit the mic. For those who don't get the reference. Sean, want to explain the reference? Since you're his producer.
Y'all are the worst.
Y'all are the worst. Don't y'all
Yeah.
me. Don't y'all me. Don't y'all me.
You do it too.
I don't do it. I don't hit the mic as much as Dennis.
No, not as much as, but you do. And you hit the table, and everyone thinks it's me. And I you know.
What do you mean everybody thinks it's you?
It's my cross to bear. I get blamed for bad audio, but it's you guys are awful. Dennis's nickname is MOB, Murder on Broadcast. Yeah.
So
It doesn't matter where we put the mic, how far away we put it, he finds a way to hit it. He leans in and shouts. He leans back and mumbles. I love the guy, but yeah, MOB.
I will say, when I listened to Dennis for the first time, when I was discovering my conservatism, I would listen to him and I'd be like, speak closer to the microphone. So I'm sorry that I just hit the mic. That's a little tangent. But those of you tuning in live, you get to see all this behind the scenes stuff. So anyway, when our martyr was martyred a few weeks ago by DA Alvin Bragg, a lot of Americans were waking up. And I noticed that the mainstream media was trying to show that they are impartial or show that they're not so bad after all. Here's an example. So shameless. The New York Times decided to come out with an op-ed just, 4 years later after the fact that, wouldn't you know, COVID did actually come from a lab. Oh my gosh. Thank you, New York Times in 2024 for alerting us to this. We didn't know by now. But we can't forget these lies. See, what they're doing right now, if I may speak generally about the mainstream media, is they know that they're in trouble because Americans are waking up after the Trump conviction. And so what they're trying to do is go, hey, we know we lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. We know we lied about Orange Man Bad, colluding with the Russians. We know we lied about the Steele dossier. We know we lied about the origins of COVID. We know that we lied about God knows what, Trump being a white supremacist. We know that we lied about January 6th. We know that we lied about basically everything, but we're impartial. See? We're releasing an op-ed that COVID came from a lab. No. We see right through you. We know what you're doing. So anyway, I'm at my parents' house this weekend and CNN is on and I'm like, oh God, turn it to Fox News, but they're wanting to keep it on CNN. And I'm like, okay, I'll watch CNN, but I'm so glad I did. because now I'm bringing to you, because I know that most people who watch this may not, like me, be watching CNN. You wouldn't want to subject yourself to that kind of misery all day. I get it. But I got to show you what they're saying. We think that they're now trying to be impartial. They're still the mouthpiece of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Let's look at this first story. Great photography on my part of my parents' TV. So, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, CNN had on an individual from Martha's Vineyard, which is so fitting. I just think that's so fitting. Of course, the professor they have on is zooming in from Martha's Vineyard. They had a guy on. I'm sorry, I forget his name. So sorry, but he was coming on. Oh, it's right here. Mark something, it seems, and he was talking about the rise of fascism in the United States. And they were having this discussion, about D-Day, and it's the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And oh my gosh, our Americans fought on D-Day, and now we have this fascism reemerging in the United States. Now, I don't want to put words in this individual's mouth. That wouldn't be fair. But I do have a little inkling that the fascism that this guy was referring to was not the Hamas supporters who were in front of the White House with their keffiyehs, but those right-wing fascists, those conservatives, those insurrectionists. That's who I have a feeling, based on what I watched of this conversation that guy was referring to. And he was talking about how it's a moment that we're coming full circle. Yes, he's actually right that we're coming full circle. He's just pointing at the conservatives, the white supremacists, instead of the actual white supremacists of the left in front of the White House calling for the eradication of the Jewish state. So ironic. Okay, so that was one of the stories. Let's go on to another one. Again, just at my parents' house, seeing CNN. Okay. So, after 3.5 years of open borders, of millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants pouring across our border, going to places like New York City, where Mayor Eric Adams will graciously hand out $53 million in taxpayer money for prepaid debit cards. After years and years of that, the American people are waking up to the fact that this is a vote-buying scheme from the Democratic Party. That what the Democratic Party is doing, it seems, is opening the border, allowing a huge influx of immigrants to come to this country, having them flock to sanctuary cities where, they are offered very nice privileges and benefits, like $53 million in prepaid debit cards. And then we see that they are trying to have these individuals be counted in the census so as to increase their electoral shares in blue states and cities. Now, you're listening to me going, oh my gosh, Julie, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, here's the proof. A few weeks ago in the Senate, there was an amendment that was proposed by a Republican which would bar all illegal immigrants from being counted in the census. Sounds reasonable, right? Every single Democrat who was there to vote voted against that amendment. Every single one. That tells you everything that you need to know about what this is all about. But the American people, thankfully, are waking up to this. But nevertheless, CNN continues to be the mouthpiece of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. So now that the American people are waking up to the illegal immigration scheme, Joe Biden is stepping up and he's saying, we got to take some border action. And then CNN, instead of calling out that this is what's happening, that Joe Biden is trying to get a vote buying scheme, it seems, has opened the border and Americans are waking up to it. And that's the only reason that he's acting now. This is the CNN headline. If we may show it one more time, my dear producers in the producer's dungeon. Yes, Biden nears huge next move on immigration after announcing executive action on border crossings. See, they're trying to make him out to be, oh my gosh, our competent, amazing president is doing a huge move. Executive border action. Thank God we've got Joe in charge, right? Okay, I told you there was another headline. You're welcome, by the way, for suffering through the CNN this weekend so that all of you wouldn't have to. You think they couldn't take it further. You think that they would have some kind of shame. Not CNN. Let's look. That's Anderson Cooper standing in front of a map of the United States with the headline, Anti-Drag Laws. That's right. He was doing a special report on all of the anti-drag laws that are going on right now in the United States. Now, when I was in the producer's dungeon about an hour and 15 minutes ago, and I was talking with our darlings in there about when to put things up, when to put this clip, I said, okay, so we have this picture of anti-drag laws. And who was it? Tony or Alejo said, I thought it said anti-drug laws. No. I can understand why you would say that. It says anti-drag laws. So obviously it's ridiculous. Okay, these laws that Anderson Cooper and CNN are referring to are not anti-drag. They are anti-transing the children. They are anti-drag people getting and twerking in front of children. We live in the United States of America. You can be a drag queen. If you lived in communist China or in Putin's Russia or basically almost every other non-Western regime in the world, you couldn't be a drag queen. But here in the United States, you are allowed to be a drag queen. But what these states are trying to legislate is that even though you might be allowed to be a drag queen, you don't have the right to talk about sex in front of a 6-year-old. It's not hard. But what CNN is doing is that they're trying to brainwash the American people. They know that most Americans don't have the time or the energy to go through and really figure out what's going on with these laws. And I don't blame a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans, they really don't have the time. They got to get up, go to work, put food on the table for their families, pay off student loans to some blue-haired gender studies person that Joe Biden has obligated them to do. Most Americans don't have the time to sift through this. That's why I do this show, because it is my job. I do have the time, and that's why I try to bring you the truth. But CNN, being the mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, it seems, is counting on the fact that most Americans don't have the time. And so they're putting up a photo of the United States, and they're saying that there are all of these anti-drag laws. Okay? It's so misleading. It's so dishonest. But it's the same thing that they're doing with Donald Trump right now. They wanted to convict him so that they could call him a felon, knowing that most Americans, again, said with no shade, don't have the time to go through and really read the law and figure out that he's not a felon. It's the same reason that they called Florida's bill that Ron DeSantis passed trying to protect children from drag queens. It's the same reason they called that the Don't Say Gay bill, even though nowhere in the bill did it stipulate that you couldn't say gay. They use these terms because they're catchy, they stick, and they want to brainwash you, the American people, into thinking that their narrative is the truth. Well, I've got news for them. I have never been more committed to being a bearer of the actual truth. And for as long as I may be in this industry, I am going to fight like hell to actually bring the truth. Because I am, and all of us are beneficiaries of the American system. We are all beneficiaries of living in Western civilization. As a woman, my God, I look at what women have to go through in Iran. You know how lucky I am to be able to walk down the street wearing my hair out, showing my shoulders, having the opportunities that I have had, being able to go to Harvard. People don't get that. I know people don't get that. We all need to know that people don't get the amazing opportunity of being an American. So at the very least, I believe it is our responsibility to fight like hell right now for this system that has given all of us what we have. Should I end on that? I had something else planned, I promised you, but I think it would be a little too much for today. But it's really good. It's a fun, kind of timeless, non-political segment. It's totally just life's crazy, weird coincidences. You'll see it in a few days. I will be very excited to show it to you. Thank you so much for all of you. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to more closely read the chat. The chat is one of the best parts of this. One of the worst parts is I got to keep looking at the camera so I don't always see your lovely comments. But I thank you so much for them. And please do email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you. It's one of the great joys of this job, and I want more interaction with you. So sorry I wasn't able to take that call, but we'll do it in the coming days. And remember, tomorrow we're live at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, and we're bringing on Spencer Clavin for the Thinker of the Month series. It's going to be really great. I'll see you then. Take care.